All right.
Thank you. All right, call to order today's meeting of the City of Salem Solid Waste Committee for Thursday, November 16th, 2023. Members present are Stapleton,
Gwen,
Nishioka,
Varney.
great, and staff. It looks like our first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes.
I move to approve the minutes from October 19th.
I second.
Great, any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Thank you. I will note that we're going to be shifting the agenda a little bit and moving item 5.B to the end of agenda item 5, so that we can make sure to have plenty of time for our policy discussion, if that's all right with the committee.
That's fine.
Okay, great. All right, I will, we don't have any action items, so I'm going to send it over to you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So the first thing on our agenda today is, since we moved down to B, so quickly facility tours. If I'm making it.
Are we doing
No,
the
sorry,
debrief?
debrief. I'm sorry. I moved the wrong one in my mind.
I'm sorry.
We
We have public comment.
Oh,
I was
public
wondering.
comment.
I know.
Do we have
just
someone
are
signed up for
this.
public comment?
Sorry.
Yes, we do.
Yes, we
You
do.
just faded into the background, Jim.
Well,
We got you,
we're
Jim.
so used to him being here. It's
Yeah,
great.
exactly.
Yeah.
It was just-
All right.
Where do you want me?
Let's have you come up here so we can see and hear you
Sorry,
really well.
Jim.
Okay,
Welcome.
no
Thanks for
problem.
coming down. All right, you know the drill.
So, totally off topic, but I have to do this. I have to give each one of you a Dolly Parton bookmark, Dolly Parton Imagination Library bookmark, because just yesterday
I'll take one for Mickey.
we learned that we now can sign up any child in Marion County, any child in Marion County.
Appreciate all your hard work.
And so I'm, I want everybody has a baby in their life, or, a neighbor, a relative, and I'm talking 0 to 5. I shouldn't say baby, preschooler in your life somewhere. I walk up to them in the grocery store.
Of course you do.
And I walk up to moms in the grocery store, are you signed up? So please help us. We need to, there's no reason not to sign up every child in our county. So having said that, my testimony today is that we really appreciated the meeting the other night. We thought it went very well. The one big ask we have is that you move forward with waiving the cart fee for downsizing, and do that now. We can't wait 2 years until you set rates again to do that. We think it's very, very, very important. And so you should work with the haulers right away. You should get it done before the first of the year if you could. And if you had to raise the fee for people to upsize in order to keep it sort of revenue neutral, that would be fine with us. That'd be fine. So, but it really needs to be done. It is such a disincentive. It's not going to get people to change, to go from 35 gallon to 20, which we think a lot of people could do that. There's a lot of people that put that 35 gallon cart out there and it's half full. No reason for that. They could save money. They just don't know. People don't know. They've had a 35 gallon cart forever. So the people need to do that. They need to downsize from 20 to every other week 20 if they can do that. And that all needs to be promoted. And that can be done if that fee is waived. But if it isn't waived, it's not, it doesn't make sense for people. It doesn't make financial sense. So that's our big ask. Where am I? I've got a minute.
Yeah, a minute.
Okay. Just one other thing. I noticed that you have taken your Covanta tour. That's great. But 350 Salem would like at a future meeting to be able to have time on your agenda to present information about incineration that we don't think you got when you did your tour. There's really a whole nother side to the story about health risks and problems with incineration. And we know experts that could if we could have 10 or 15 minutes on your agenda, we could give you a presentation to get that side of the story. Because we have a very different view of things than Covanta, as you might imagine. So anyway, thank you very much for all you do.
Thank you. And members, if you want to let me know at some point in time in the near future about the presentation, if you're good with that, I'll work with Ryan to get it scheduled.
I would say let's do it.
Okay. Anybody else?
I had a quick question.
Oh, sure. Sorry, Mickey.
Sorry, and thanks for coming. Oh, that's all right. Thanks for coming in, Jim. What do we do about signing children up in Polk County,
Oh, good question, Mickey.
especially without the potential of not having a library?
Right.
Yeah, don't.
You know, we're this close to getting West Salem into the program. We've been working with Capital Manor, and we've raised money at Capital Manor. We've done very well. Senator Gene Derfler led the effort at Capital Manor to raise money, and we're real close. I'm hoping maybe within weeks, we'll be able to say to families in West Salem, sign your kid up. We're real close. And then we'll have the whole city of Salem, and we'll be really happy about that. We're working hard to get it done.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the update. I was just curious.
How much money do you have to raise in order to,
Um,
sorry, I
We
know
try-
this is off topic.
we
but-
try to raise 3 years worth, and it varies because we have the counts of kids in zip codes is the way it works. And so it varies. In 97302, for example, it's like $30,000. I can't remember what it is for West Salem. It's probably something like that, something like $30,000.
Okay.
And then we have state money coming. The legislature appropriated $1.7 million that we hope to get next year. So, but when we sign a kid up, we're making a long-term commitment. And so it's, we got to have the money. But Dolly pays for a big part of it. We pay $2.20 a book, which when you think about it, to have a book mailed every month for $2.20, that's a deal. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Okay. Sorry for all of that.
No,
So if we go back,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't see why we wouldn't want to hear the other side. So
Yeah.
I say let's get them in here and
Yeah.
hear what they have to say.
I'm fine with that as well.
And I'd also like to understand the comparison of the methane that comes from the landfill versus what comes from Covanta. And then if we can somehow improve either one.
Right.
Because I'm not ready to give up Covanta in the sense of I think it does a lot, especially if we can improve the exhaust.
Yeah, and I know we need to get better scrubbers on that as well, but understanding that whole process, maybe we can get more information from Marion County on that
And the
as
more
well.
we put in the landfill, the more methane, it's kind of like, how
And,
can we compare it?
right, and recognizing our power, we have zero power
Exactly.
over Covanta and what they do,
or Coffin Butte.
or Coffin Butte.
Work on it.
So how do we
control it?
leverage?
And then
Mickey, are you good with that? Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay.
So if I could make one comment,
Yeah.
so that is one of the items that we'll
Oh,
look at here a little bit later.
Okay, then we don't need
I wanted to
to
add
talk
to our
about it.
discussion, and I
Yes.
think it'd be great when we have that kind of larger discussion about disposal and emissions, environmental impact and all that. Love to have Salem 350 come in and be a part of that discussion.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
If that would
Yeah.
work for this board.
Is on the
Committee.
list also about exchange rates, because I have some comments I like,
Yes.
so I'll
Yep.
just wait till we get to
Yep,
those.
yep,
Can I ask a question about the downsizing thing?
sure.
So in our household, we are good at recycling and understanding the yard debris and how it all works, and we try to minimize waste. I have like 5.5 people that live with me, and we have a 35-gallon can that on the regular is not full. But I would never downsize, because on the occasion that a kid cleans out their room or we clean out the garage or whatever it is, right? You have those weeks where it is full.
Mhm.
But on the regular, so I'm wondering if that idea of understanding how many people can get to a 20-gallon size can, if that's really a good measurement for waste. Does that make sense? Because
Per person.
per-
are you
just
kind of
understanding,
looking-
right? Like, because I'm guessing we actually have tonnage, right? And if we actually could look at the tonnage and say, overall, we're reducing per our population.
Yep.
Would that be a better calculation of reduction? I mean, I understand what they're saying. They want people to save money and go to a smaller can and
Yep.
even restrict their own. But
Yep.
I'm just wondering, I'm sure there's plenty of people like me who don't fill up their 35-gallon can, but also wouldn't go down to a 20. Does that make sense?
And without going too far down
Yeah, sorry.
that train of thought, there are some options. So if, as an example, you went to a 20 because 20 would work for you most of the time,
Uh-huh.
there is what's called extras. So if during a couple times a year,
Christmas
maybe
or
holidays,
Thanksgiving.
Christmas, exactly,
Yeah.
you have an extra bag that you need to put on top or put inside, they'll charge you extra, possibly for that one time,
Right.
but overall for the year it would be less expensive. So there are some options that way. Or you might go, hey neighbor,
Yeah.
you
of
don't
course.
feel
I
your
do that with the yard debris
yours
cart
up,
all the time.
do you mind if I put it in and maybe throw them $5 or something?
You'll see that me rolling around our neighborhood with yard carts. Okay,
So-
Are
sorry.
you asking for somewhere to put yours or?
Yeah, we always have extra. Always full. Well, not always, for the most part. It's full.
Mine too.
Yard people. That's what gets us into trouble. Okay, sorry, sir. Continue.
No,
This is
you're the
always
chair.
entertaining.
You're the
Always
chair.
entertaining. That's what I am. Okay.
Okay, so public comment. Thank you, Jim. No,
Debrief.
no action items. So yes, back to management update information. So I wanted to just take a few minutes for the committee to provide some feedback for either Monday's public hearing and or the process leading up to Monday for our rate setting. What are some areas that you feel that we, as staff, could do better? Information that wasn't provided, too much information, too little information. I'll take kudos too. So
I felt
whatever.
like you guys nailed it. My only recommendation would be for us to have talked more about, 'cause I didn't even know there were cart fees to exchange. So I felt like we were a little blindsided. I was a little blindsided, especially when we went to that neighborhood association meeting and that
Yep.
poor lady says, I couldn't afford to do it. So,
So I'm
but
hearing,
other than that, I thought you guys nailed it.
what I'm hearing is, so this committee would like to see, and I absolutely agree, the whole rate sheet and be able to have a chance to look and review the whole rate sheet. So, and that's on me to get that done and have that ready for you guys sooner in the process. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that I felt it was good. I don't know, and again, we'll talk about exchange rates here when we get to that on the agenda, but I felt that the presentation was good. I thought it was very clear. Sometimes if we have something that is so lengthy, I might scan it, but not fully grasp it.
Sure, yeah.
So I know that it's very difficult to narrow some of this information down because somebody else might say, well, I want the details. So I don't know if, I felt like you did a great presentation in kind of summarizing and then having this just as sort of the backup in case somebody wanted to dig deeper.
Right.
So keeping it as clear, but small in the amount of material.
Succinct.
Yes.
There's a lot of information.
There
and it
is a
a
lot of
challenge
information.
get it into,
And yeah, and you have
bite-sized
to try to
pieces.
figure out what do I call down or just, kind of say this, these are the rates.
Sure.
Because as the more it is, then sometimes it's like, oh, should I question this one price? Because really, it's sometimes like, this is the overall cost. And I loved how you broke down the medical costs and the carts. This was good, but I don't necessarily need all of those.
What I took away from it, you did a great job. The presentation was great. Was that I'm really thankful that we have this committee
Yes.
because the majority of us on council are getting a deep dive on a semi-regular basis through this process
Mhm.
and understanding it better. I knew that Counselor Phillips and the mayor took a special meeting with you to go through it before the meeting. And then the majority of the questions came from Nordike and Gonzalez, the two who are not on this committee, nor did they take you up on a meeting. So I was thinking in my head, okay, so next time we do this committee, maybe somebody like me needs to step off and somebody like Nordike needs to come on, or whoever is going to be new to the council in that way. Does that make sense? So that we can, because once you get a basic understanding, then if we can bring more people into that basic understanding, I think that's even better. Gonzalez brought up a question that I thought was interesting about not understanding the history of the increases. And I'm not sure if that would have been helpful, or does that make sense?
Mhm.
Because
That
it is
email's
what it
coming
is.
too.
Okay.
And I'll send it out to everyone.
But that was interesting, you know, we're always just looking forward instead of saying like, this was what happened last time and the time before that, but looking forward, because I think that's what he was wanting. What's the trend of this?
Yep.
And
And an
That might be-
explanation of
yeah.
why it was 5% this time. I think the other thing, why am I following her? Is what I talked to you about just the other day. The franchise fee, how much that total is. So, because I had received some emails, people saying, you know, how dare you raise the rates? This is your way of getting revenue. It's like,
I got a couple of those too.
it's not revenue. And so I think talking about the franchise fee and this, it brings in I think you said 120,000 total.
So this increase will bring, I want to make sure I was clear. This increase will bring an additional 120-ish,
Okay.
125-ish $1,000 in this next year. In total, I forgot the number,
Just
but
under 3 million.
say that again?
It'll be just under 3 million. for this
Just
one.
under
But
3
it's-
million in
But
total.
explain, I think what would be important is to explain
What it's
where
used for.
does that go? And
All
who-
general fund.
all
So
general
police,
fund.
fire, parks,
And-
just like property taxes.
And so
Yep.
as Josh and I were talking today, I would be curious as to know just sort of like the cost of even you and your team managing solid waste franchises. Like, how much does that cost? And because people will hear this chunk of money going in, but not necessarily thinking about the staff costs of just doing this. I think that would be important too, so that there's an understanding, like everything we do costs money to perform that.
Well, and I'm really actually interested. Are all franchise fees, do they go to the general fund?
Mhm.
What's interesting to me about this one is that the reason they're paying a franchise fee is because they're using our roads in order to do their work, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So I find it fascinating that actually the franchise fee isn't going to pay for the cost to administer the fee, but then going into road maintenance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, the general fund is in crisis, so I really want to shut up right now. But it's an honest question about the reason why we charge them is because
They're utilizing.
a service that we're providing that they're not directly paying into. And our transportation fund is going to be in the red in, I think, 4 years now. I'm just going to put that giant, not want to talk about it thing out on the table.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
There used to be a transfer.
Yeah.
That happened to the transportation fund when that fee was increased. I'm not remembering what year, Ryan.
2015, it increased from 5% to 7%. There was an additional $600-ish thousand or so that was
Mhm.
generated from that increase of 2%. And for a couple, 2-3 years or so like that, that additional was transferred from the general fund to transportation on that increase.
But that was changed just with revenue and expense discussion.
Yeah.
So that may be a bigger topic,
Yeah.
but
I
I
feel like
think
I can.
that understanding the breakdown would be helpful. Not only for the counselors, but even for me to then discuss it with my neighborhood associations or sort of say, here it is.
Mhm.
And that's absolutely a policy choice. for
Right.
Council. And it's something this committee could certainly make.
Okay, another policy. So are we opening?
So is that
And I
solid
feel like-
waste policy or is that council policy?
It's a council policy, but it's related, right? Because it's a
Right.
solid waste
I'm just-
franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just-
So it's certainly something you could include in your policy recommendation, and it's something council could talk about separately. But ultimately, it's council that would make that distinction about.
I'm not willing to pull money away from general fund right now.
Like I opened a can of worms.
Well, I'm the one that started it.
No,
Called
that's
and I
good.
asked, how much extra does this
Mhm.
get us? And
Okay.
it really wasn't much, and I'm thinking that barely pay staffing to do all of this work. I mean, probably doesn't even, the extra that would be good.
So is it 600,000 to the general fund or 3 million?
It's just under 3 million for this year.
Okay.
Last year was 2.8, sorry.
Okay.
So with the increase, I think it'll be around 3 million.
I'm glad you keep those numbers in your mind better
It's
than I do.
amazing.
I look at them.
There you go. I have it from,
Mickey, you got anything to add to this can of worms?
No, I think it's a really good discussion. I hadn't even thought about this aspect of it, so I'm really glad that we're talking about it. I thought the presentation Monday night was really, really good, and it led to a really good conversation. So I thought it was well done.
thank you.
Okay. I'll follow up with staff on my can of worms.
Okay,
Jesus Christ.
Well,
well, and that's something we can possibly add to our next topic here.
Okay.
So moving on, I'm going to,
Now we're on policy discussion and then we'll loop back to you.
policy discussion.
yeah,
Potentially, I think, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
Yeah,
at the
yep.
end.
yeah.
Take your time.
Take your time.
Oh,
so let's see here. Guest presentation. Okay, real quickly, facility tours, kind of
Yeah, oh, yeah.
topic, ride-alongs. So in the agenda, you have a list of each ward and the hauler that has a service area within that ward. And on the table, so this is some of your own homework I'm gonna let you do,
Ooh,
is contact information for each of those haulers.
okay,
So what I would recommend is at your convenience and leisure and desire, give them a call and set up a ride-along.
Okay.
If you need some assistance with that, having a hard time contacting someone, please let me know. But I will, so I figured I'd get out of the way.
Yeah.
And
great.
so all the information should be there to be able to contact them.
and could we choose? Are we able to choose? I want to ride along for recycling, or I want to ride along. for-
Yeah, I'd call them up and talk to them, and you can do more than one if you want. It's gonna be, based on schedule and routes and
Be
that
a
type of thing,
very
and
early morning,
Uh-huh.
it will likely be an early morning.
very, very early morning.
So, admittedly, I have not done one of these myself, so I'm looking forward to doing that as well. So,
Fun.
yes. Okay,
Now we're gonna save the world
one plastic ball at a time.
every day. That's what we do.
Okay, item C, solid waste policy discussion. This is where I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to go over to this one right here. Got all of that. Hey, Mickey, can you see the solid waste policy discussion presentation?
Yes, I can. Are you there? Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful.
great.
And this is, how do I move this thing? We'll move over here. Okay. All right, that's just title sheet.
It's great.
There we go. Okay. So I wanted to take a few minutes. So this slide and this other handout that has kind of a long list of stuff I wanted to make sure that through this process over the last 4 or 5 months, that we as staff have kind of captured all the different things and ideas and thoughts and possible policy issues that have been discussed.
Jim, did you?
So, and this isn't your only chance, but I wanted to at least take a few minutes. And so they're broken down into, as I'll read the slide a bit as you're kind of reading, they work together as you're reading the paper there. I've tried to organize them into general categories. So the first one, well, first I'll just start off with, again, thanks to Councilor Nishioka, the motion on October 22nd, which kind of kicked this off officially with our policy. So I'll just restate that. And it was, I moved to ask city staff to begin work on a solid waste policy for city council review that considers the following elements: equitable service provision and rates, climate action plan elements, Oregon Recycling Modernization Act, and reviews service options of other cities and counties. So there's a lot of different pieces in there, and I have a feeling we'll probably expand possibly even a little bit beyond the particular that scope that's in there. But I think that gives us a really good base to start our work. The rest of these are categorized under what do we have? 6 kind of areas there. The first one being waste reduction. So just a general question of how do we produce less waste in our community?
Mhm.
The next one being environmental impact. How do we reduce and or mitigate the environmental impact of solid waste and solid waste management within our community? Equitable service rates. How do we ensure equity in the provision of solid waste services? Outreach and education. How do we inform residents? And financially sustainable. Financially sustainable. How do we fund our solid waste system? So those are the general categories that I've tried to put the long list of things that we've talked about into one of those categories. So I wanted at this point, and we've had maybe a few minutes already to kind of look through and digest a little bit. One, I want to make sure that there isn't some burning thing that I'm leaving off of here. And two, if there's anything that it's like, I'm not quite sure you captured it. Obviously, I haven't gone into detail here, but maybe the way that it's stated doesn't capture it or in the way that it was intended. So I'll give you a few minutes and then let me know as you're reading through and kind of see something.
Sorry, I should know this. What's CPI?
Consumer price index.
Okay,
So
thank you.
inflation factor.
I was like,
apologize.
I don't know.
So, what I was going to say earlier is on here for exchange rate.
Yeah.
Yes.
I understand what Jim is asking for, but I also feel that we shouldn't charge people extra if their life situation is now such that they need to increase their cart
But
size.
how are we gonna monitor that? I mean, you can't like govern that, can you? Like, are you gonna
I
be like,
just-
did you have a
so-
baby? Did you just have one?
Well, so
know,
instead of
what kind of diapers
reducing,
are
it's
you
just
using?
when they're changing their cart size, period, not
And
necessarily
how do I
reducing.
monitor that? I don't feel that we would be in the business of monitoring their lifestyle, whether they are now renting out rooms in their house.
Right.
I mean, that's,
Right.
That's a very strong
Yeah, I
possibility
have
and.
2
and so-
roomers right now.
Exactly, so you.
Right.
And then what if somebody has twins, or what if somebody
Whatever.
has to
Could
come
we,
back home?
Go for it, Mickey. I can't see, you're super tiny on my screen, so I can't see any hands, so
yeah,
you're just
talk
gonna
to
have to.
us.
that's
get
okay,
her up.
that's okay. I was wondering, I am curious as to what policy each of the haulers uses right now. If they let the first 1 or 2 go by, if they do implement that charge, some may waive it. I don't know what they do. So thinking about this from that equitable side as well as just, let's get an idea what's going on.
I hadn't thought about that. Do they all kind of do the same thing, or are they just doing whatever they want?
So there is some discretion, and I know that some of them use that discretion more or less in that as it's been described to me. I think some of them, if there hasn't been a change in the service or size of a cart, let's say size of cart, within the life of the account, and this is
Right.
the first time, they may waive it.
Mhm.
So if, however, someone is changing their cart size annually, maybe they're snowbirds, and while they're there, they want it serviced, and when they're not, they want all the carts taken away, and so there's
Yeah.
anyway, based on that, so there's obviously a cost associated with exchanging
Swapping
carts.
them out.
There's actual labor of going, taking a truck, going out, pick them up, exchanging and whatever, and then also cleaning and power washing and all that kind of stuff to get them ready for the next customer who may be using it. They want a clean cart.
Yep.
When it comes out, and so I think that's a great area of discussion, and we can find out what is being done now. I will say that with some of the kind of seeing the writing on the wall, and the questions that I've had around this, I've talked with the haulers actually the evening of the public hearing, and I think there is definitely we could make some decisions and or provide some guidance, and the haulers
Set apart.
would take that guidance before the end of our
Sure.
2-year.
Sure.
So,
Okay, that's great.
but yeah, I think we can get some. If that's something we want to look at fairly soon, I can gather that information about what is currently being done, and then we can go from there.
Go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
think that because one time I called, and I
Mhm.
think I told you, it was dirty. I wanted to exchange it, and I was gonna be charged $75. So it'd be nice to know, or I would like to see that the haulers have a schedule. And it may be that schedule could be somehow less if somebody's going down to produce less waste.
Mhm.
But I would hate to see large charges for somebody who's in need of increasing. Even though we're trying to decrease usage or get to zero, I just don't feel it's fair that somebody who may be still in a financial bind but need to increase, that they should be charged. So that's how I see it.
That $75 seems super excessive.
It is, and that's what
And I
Ryan
don't-
was
Yeah,
was
that's
Yeah.
surprised
crazy.
by it.
To exchange should not be $75. If a cart needs to be replaced, and it's being replaced for a use where it was used for a purpose that was not intended, I
Mhm.
think is the language in there. Basically, if they abuse the cart and they
Mhm.
damage the cart because of either or put too much in it, put a whole bunch of rocks on it, try to lift it, it breaks or whatever,
Mhm.
then there's a replacement fee of I think it's like $78 right now. To exchange though shouldn't be more than the $33-ish, and that's for multiple
three.
carts. One is $22-ish.
So back to your point about how do the haulers know that why is this lifestyle?
Right.
They asked me lots of questions, and
That's so
I'm
interesting.
serious. They asked me, and I said, nope. It's dirty.
Yeah,
Nothing-
people used to do that, and they were like, "It's gross." Especially the Yardbird carts, they get gross. I clean mine.
Yeah.
It's gross.
And so I have now learned, and in fact, wasn't it the haulers that I thought there was some literature that came out, or maybe you told me that you can hire people that'll come and clean your cart.
What?
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
There's a guy on the Nextdoor app that I see.
that's
That's
So they'll
amazing.
clean your
Someone
cart.
told me
Yeah.
There was a kid in my old neighborhood.
I will have to tell my kids. This is great. This is great news.
They've got a new job.
You got
for
a
the
new
summer.
job, kid.
So
Yeah.
anyway, and I think by asking me those questions, it was that I ended up getting a new cart or a clean cart.
Hmm.
And I think they charged me, but it was not $75. But that's what they basically told me when I first called. I said, $75? And so then they asked me questions.
Gotcha.
So I think part of it may be customer service.
There was something that Mickey had brought up, I think, at our last meeting about looking at other cities who do like an every other week or something. Is that
Mhm.
somewhere on here? I just want to make sure it's on here.
So under, not sure,
It would be
is it?
waste reduction, maybe?
Under waste reduction, I have every other week service,
Okay.
some services versus all. So
Okay.
just as a
That's
general
where that
topic.
is. Okay, perfect.
And so obviously we could look at what other cities are doing, what options they have there. Also have that concept of pay as you throw,
Yeah.
which is kind of part of that conversation. So I think just we can do a little deeper dive on that and have a better understanding of what that means and how we can apply it to Salem.
Perfect.
And there's that also, how do we measure success? And that would be
Yeah.
probably tonnage, other than, there's
Other than cart
Food.
size.
food, of course, is very expensive, but there are things that are more costly. They don't weigh. Do they weigh when they're hauling?
Mhm.
Because I know that if it's too heavy, they won't take it. But I
You
don't
mean
know.
each
So-
can?
They don't weigh each can, so as it's lifting up, but there are limits on the truck, and if like
If it's too heavy to
if it's
lift.
too heavy and they got to put a little extra gas in to get the thing up, so yeah, there are weight limits that are in our actual city code, not just in the rate schedule or the hauler standards, but in our code, there are limits to how much weight can be in a cart for
Yeah,
each
I
size of
thought
that
so. I
cart.
thought, for some
Yeah.
reason, I thought that, and I know that they have meters, so they watch what's going in.
Yep.
And environmental impact, you have the EV trucks listed, so that's
Did
good.
you guys see the Portland got one?
I did.
Chris sent me the news article.
Yep.
It was very exciting. Okay. Any other comments on the policy considerations?
I have a couple.
Go for it.
I didn't know if we were going to go through these bullet by bullet or how we were going to proceed. For me, having the metrics to be able to measure as we're doing this is really crucial. That environmental impact, I read through the Olympia plan last night, and I thought it was interesting, that metric, the number of gallons of fuel used each year. I hadn't even thought about that. I thought that was interesting. Another thing, do we have a statewide or a county solid waste plan, like was mentioned in that report?
Yes, there's Marion County has a Dakota, if I can put you on the spot, what
Yes.
is that called again?
So we have the solid waste management plan. It is from 2009.
Right.
So, yeah. So it
Jeez,
is,
Yeah, that's right.
and so I think Brian would be okay with me sharing. We are in the processes of just very much playing with the idea of having a newer solid waste management plan to move to what's called a materials management plan that takes into account the solid waste, but also this environmental impact question, reducing the environmental impact of materials all throughout their life cycle, not just at end of life when we produce, right? For here, you might relate that to procurement. We buy local, so we don't ship, our emissions overseas, in the sense that if you buy a pencil, it might go to 8 countries before it gets to you. That's not reflected in a sector-based model that says, oh yeah, we know that the emission cost of that pencil being transported to a store is how much gas was used to drive it from a distribution center to a store. But we don't know how many emissions they used
Right.
to get here in general, which was more comprehensive. And it's hard because you have to go, we want to be within city limits or not. But yeah, so more about the impact of materials, the whole life cycle, the very beginning stages.
Yep. I know that in the ORS, Oregon Revised Statutes, it mentions something about a statewide garbage plan or solid waste plan. I have never seen it, and I don't know that there is. I'm getting a head shaking. I don't believe that there's a state plan. There are an older county plan working on updating that. And so, yes.
Okay, thank you. Where was I? No, I really don't have anything else on these, other than as I look at them, I think of metrics and how we're going to measure once we implement something, any changes. For example, the last 5 years of tonnage, for example, and then once we implement anything, is just ways to track this is important to me. Also, I'm going to be on until 1:15. I just wanted to let you know I got a little reprieve.
All right. So unless there's any more specific things, I want to kind of talk about kind of how I'd like to move forward with this
Yes.
group of stuff.
One question, does this all, because in the motion, we were talking about Oregon's Recycling Modernization Act. Does all of this just naturally fall under that, or is there more to discover there? Does that make sense? More to understand for us, or?
There's a lot of overlap.
Okay.
I think, but yeah, there are some areas like the producer responsibility that we don't really touch here. There's funding associated with that. There's yeah, we could do a deeper dive. We've touched on the
Yeah.
RMA just a little bit as a
Right.
brief introduction, but yeah, we could do a deeper dive. And there's administrative rule making happening right now.
Yeah.
In fact, there's some of that is being presented and being worked on.
Do you know when that's aiming to be complete?
So the initial effective date or implementation of elements, I believe, is July 1st of 2025.
Okay,
And so we got about a year and a half before that. And then there's a second round of implementation of July 1st of 2026.
Okay.
So we have some time there,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of activity going on behind the scenes right now that I'm doing my best to try to keep up on. And I'd love to be able to bring some of that back as it applies to the work we're doing
Yeah.
here.
I really hate double work, right? So I don't want us to brainstorm and really lay out something, hash it out, and then the state comes in and says, well,
Yep.
I supersede.
Yep.
So how do we make sure that we're not doing that? That's all I want to say.
Yep, absolutely.
Please talk all you want now about what you want to do next.
So, and I thank you very much for addressing that or concern on that. And that is definitely something that I'll be working to best understand that process that's going on and to interject it into what we're doing so that, like you say, we get, hey, we got this great policy
Right.
and now we have to rewrite the whole
Yep.
thing because of what the state is doing at its level. So I want to try to consider those, and there may be some things where I have to say, I think this is great, but this, the state is likely going to have a significant impact in this area, and we might want to just do a timeout for a second, or this is the direction that it's going, so we probably want to stay within this direction,
Yep.
or have some leniency, or even just say, hey, this is our policy is going to be whatever the state says it's going to be in this area, so we can make some ties that way.
Thank you.
So my goal here, and I want to actually, we might be able to get through a little bit of this today. So I want to try to get us some easy wins early, right?
Nice.
But my goal, so we've got a couple of months before, so we're taking December off, and we'll talk about scheduling here. I'll try to do that before you need to leave, Mickey. But my goal is to, I guess what I'm asking today is, as we're looking at these, and I think I've already identified possibly some, but my hope is to bring back then some of these either in maybe some individual items or kind of groups of items like the waste reduction or environmental impact and that, but put together some like white paper or do a little deeper dive of information that I can then bring back to you. And in January, we can start kind of attacking them one at a time. And so if there are some of these that you really feel more passionate about than others, I want to make sure that we're addressing those, or some of them are probably going to take a little bit more work and a little more heavy lift. And so kind of looking for not necessarily ranked, but hey, these 2 or 3 things are really a high priority for this committee and want to address early. And then I will say that, as you probably saw on the agenda, I'd like to touch on a couple of the financially sustainable issues, and maybe even get one or 2 wins in today. So.
How does the committee feel? Are there areas, I'm kind of catching on a couple of them that we've brought up several times. Kind of looking around here. The medical waste thing has kind of understanding where the in-state, out-of-state disposal, that has come up several times. I don't know if that's something you guys want to pull to the surface, but might be a good white paper candidate.
Especially, I think, anything out of state.
Out of state. Yeah, the mayor leaned into that. I don't know if you guys heard that. He seems to not be
Well,
wanting
especially
to
for the
leachate.
And that, me too.
I think it would be great to have 350 come in and give their, since we've just recently had the Covanta, it might be a good opportunity to bring that forward in line. And what I hear a lot from the committee and from council is the exchange rate on the fees is something that we want to dive into, I think, sooner rather than later. Are there other things that you guys are? I mean, all of it, yes, but we,
I know, it's
yeah,
just like,
but
what do I narrow down? I think that, equitable rates and service are important too. That may not take up as much time as some of the bigger options, but I think we need to be able to speak to our citizens. So, like when we're talking about if the rate increases, we really need to have a full understanding of the financial sustainability, how much it costs. So I'd really like to understand that better.
Okay, so kind of that outreach.
More
Sure,
like
okay.
the financial
Okay.
sustainability,
Yep.
outreach and education.
yeah, that was something I just marked.
People always ask for that. We've been giving it. It's like, I don't know what else can we do. That's frustrating. So it's like, I feel like understanding rates and direction of money, I think hopefully continued education will be ongoing and maybe be more robust. But again, people have to pay attention.
I think that understanding the roles of the haulers, the city and the county on the education
Yes.
piece might be really a good thing to put
Good point.
forward.
Yes.
I saw those handouts at the meeting, which were great to have.
Mhm.
Love to get that to Irma so that it can go out to neighborhood associations, right? Like that kind of thing. How can we as the city use the resources we have in order to educate the people in a different,
But the haulers
Reach
could
them.
also easily put that
Yes,
into their bills.
they could.
too. So,
but everybody needs it from multiple angles.
right.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
exactly. We have to hear it and hear it again and again and again. And that's what education is about. You have to hear
Yeah.
it so many times before you start to understand it.
We could put it on a billboard.
We could light it up at night. We could like flash, make it flashy. That's exactly what I want.
Yes, I said that for your benefit.
Yes. Mickey, you got anything?
No, other than the outreach and education, which I feel is crucial because if people aren't downsizing because they don't know about it or whatever, but the whole outreach and education is such a big umbrella here. It covers all of these. And I don't know what the best way to move forward with that is, but yeah, that's pretty crucial.
So I will say that, so as we're coming up with the notification of the rate increases, which the haulers need to do is a 30-day notification, all that kind of thing. So that's going to be happening. I will be working with them on the draft of that notification. I'll make sure we have the 20-gallon every other week and try to have something in there that says, call your hauler to ensure you have the right size cart. If you feel you have a change in there. I would also, I think I can say fairly confidently that without needing an action by this board, but just a general, hey, we'd like to see some movement here, that on that exchange fee, the card exchange fee, I think if I could make a statement and get a general consensus that that if the so I'll start off with this. The haulers, I think, concern is that if we just waive the fee, anytime someone wants to exchange a cart, that someone's going to be all the time, and their effort and the cost around that activity is going to skyrocket, because then there's just freedom to change the cart whenever. So if we say it hasn't been changed in the last 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or something, that I can talk with them about, what might be, how often do people tend to change carts, or if you have some direction that you would like to see, I will take that to the haulers and we can come up with something. I can just follow up with this committee in communication before our January meeting to say, hey, this is what the haulers are offering, if you will, and are committing to do, and then just move forward with it without a specific action by this committee.
I think I would be fine with that. I think it's really important to know kind of where their breaking point is,
Yes.
right? I have a
Mhm.
feeling it's going to be once a year or once every 2 years or something like that.
I think 5 years is too long.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree.
Yeah, I'd say anywhere from 1 to 3 years that,
Okay,
and my guess is that it may end up being like every 2 years you can change for no fee. And then after that, they can exchange, but have a fee. Like if they're doing it more frequently, then there would be a fee to that. But if every 2 years, they can do it for free, change their cart size.
so if I say 2 years and I get significant pushback, would this committee be, would 3 years be kind of that 2 to 3 year range?
Mickey, what you thinking?
Oh, I'm thinking 2 years makes sense with our 2-year rate setting period, just in alignment personally. As for 3 years, I mean, if we needed to, I guess it's okay. That's kind of hard to track, I guess. I don't know. It depends on how they're gonna keep track of it.
So every hauler keeps account notes. And so they have a history of all the notes. So if someone's asking for an exchange, they can go back in the notes and see the last time they exchanged with the date stamp. So there's nothing that we have to track, but the haulers, they keep all those account notes.
I would like to see it at 2 years or
Okay.
less. 3 years doesn't really feel. A lot happens in 3 years, and like we were all talking about, we want to encourage this behavior. So, and for me, I would like to not go above 2 years, but
Okay.
I agree.
I'll take that to them. And so what I anticipate is during our next rate setting, and I think this next couple of years will give us a good sample, possibly, some experience. We may see, hey, that this activity cost X amount during this time, and that might be something we need to roll into as a cost in our rate setting that we do in 2 years.
It'd be interesting to see on their billing, like what kind of educational things they have on their billing. Because, hey, this is me being nerdy, but say they have a 64-gallon can, is it noted on there? Like you could save this much money a month if you switch to a 32, or if you have a 32, does it say you could save this much money a month if you switch to a 20, right? Like
How many people are set up on auto pay though?
I
You know what I
am.
mean? I am.
I don't
but-
even care. Like
so
just
that's what
take
I
the
mean.
money, right?
So I'm not gonna see that and,
Right.
yeah.
And
And
how do we reach people?
I mean, I don't even go in and like look at that account. It just
Right.
gets paid.
And so that's
Magically.
somebody's choice. But I think even oftentimes if you go in and look at your statement, they could have it listed because it's often, I don't know, I'm auto pay, but I actually get my bill. I mean, I still look at it. I open it, look at it. That is a good question when I have more than I want to do. But I'm wondering, if somebody went in and looked at their electronic statement, if that stamp could also be on there, like a statement. So I'm not sure how their electronic statements work for people that are receiving those versus copied statements, but they save a lot of money not mailing them out.
Maybe it's just with the rate increase. You know what I mean? I mean, I know that's something people are going to look at, right? Like, okay, what are we going to cost now?
Yes.
And then to have that kind of bit of
Educational
information,
part.
that education, like, hey, if this is not hitting right with you, you could reduce your can size to save money. I don't know, but
And Republic's done that because when I get my, like update, it's informed me that you can have that choice. So, but I don't know
That's
if
great.
all of them are doing it.
I hope
Yep.
so.
Most of them, as I see it, will, especially for cart, so they'll do one for cart and one for containers, so residential and commercial. And they'll list out the 20-gallon, the 35-gallon, the 65-gallon. So to me, at least, it's kind of intuitive. It's like, oh, I'm on a 65-gallon. Oh, hey, there's this 35-gallon one that's less expensive. And so it's maybe implicit that there are other options.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I will.
Have we given you enough?
On that, I think so. So medical waste, just kind of having a one day or some information on, maybe kind of look at that medical waste plus, so we could do medical waste specific, but that also then leads us into the Covanta conversation, but that also leads us into cough and butte and emissions, leachates and PFAS. So that's kind of
That's a lot.
really
That's a lot.
big, so that might
Yes.
be a couple of meetings, but it sounds like the medical waste, at least just some information on in-state, out-of-state. What are those costs? What are some of the, just the kind of
Yep.
white page on all of that. I also have roles of outreach for Holler City County. And then looking at some of that financially sustainable, maybe a little deeper dive into, if I'm understanding right, kind of the COSA process we can include in there, franchise fees, where that goes. So I come to you and say, hey, we need, they're at a 7.5% ROR and they're looking for this percent. We could even do a little exercise.
That'd be great.
Bring in a model, has the exercise and how inflationary factors impact versus some of the history of the return and some of that. So we can do a little exercise if that would be helpful.
So I feel like that's like 3 or 4 months
Mhm.
of work. Is everybody okay if I ask for maybe we dive into this low income discount, the cost-based rates, kind of the late fees, like I don't want to forget that really important piece of equity and making sure that we're tackling that at some point in time. Is that okay to put that out on your 6-month radar?
And as we already, well, at least I have heard, if they've applied for utility rate reduction, it also goes to the numbers, because I got it. So that's good.
So I would, okay, I think I have some good stuff there. And if, as we're moving along, if the priorities change, let me know. We'll work on that. I just want to check time really
Do
quick.
we want to
Okay.
talk about our next meeting or before we
And
jump
dates.
into Dakota?
Yeah. So Mickey, while we have you, I am gonna skip to D and then we'll go back to the second half of, oh, sorry. So I will do this stop share. Okay. Just really quickly, I just want to make sure that with this group, so understanding that the mix of this group could change in
Yeah.
January with mayor's, boards, and commissions appointments, but hopefully, assuming that this group is the same moving into this next year, does this time, the third Thursday of each month, from noon to 1:30, is this a time that you would like to continue? Just kind of looking for a general consensus of that, or is this like, hey, this is a really difficult time, and if we could look at something else?
It works well for me.
Works fine for me.
Me too.
Okay.
How about you?
Yes, there's just a couple Thursdays I'm gonna have to switch some things around, but I'll make it work.
Okay. I will get the calendar out for next year very soon, so that it gets on your calendar.
So
Are
we
we-
don't,
Are we hoping to get out to Coffin Butte soon? And I know everybody's really interested in going out there and also the composting facility that's down there. Is
Yeah.
that like a January, February? Is that what we're hoping for?
I'm thinking sometime when it's a little less wet.
Okay,
So springtime, late spring.
okay, sounds good.
So I'm gonna
May, June?
be in, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll be in kind of contact with the folks out there of what would be a good time. Because yeah, we stay in the vehicle and so we drive around in a
Okay.
pickup truck and so we want to make sure that pickup truck can get around
Doesn't
all the
get
spots that
stuck.
it needs to, it doesn't get stuck. So
Okay, is there anything else on our tours that we were thinking about doing? Or is that the last two?
we could do a little deeper dive in like the transfer stations. I'm trying to think if I'm missing something else, but
I don't think so.
there's the coast. What's the
Juneau's,
Juneau?
Juneau's cool. I might suggest it is not Marion County, but Juneau's either.
Sure. I don't know if we're still
Interested in that.
going that direction.
Yeah, if you still want to do stuff, bring recycling in Lane County is cool. It shows a model of if you're recovering materials to be sold at kind of price. They're almost like a local Habitat for Humanity restore. We don't have that here, but we've talked to bring previously about what would it look like a Marion County model, things like that. So another way to divert, this is maybe one of your metrics for success,
okay,
of diverting materials, getting them to folks in a more equitable way.
I would
I like that.
know how much that costs to get up.
Oh, yes, right. That could be a good one. They're great. We work with them a lot and just partner with them.
Great, thank you for the suggestion.
Yep.
Of course.
Thank you. Okay, so
I just
going,
want to confirm that we do
Yes.
not have a meeting on the 21st of December.
that is
Correct.
correct. Next time you'll see me is in January,
Okay.
at least in this context. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again here briefly. Okay, share screen. Here we go. One. And share. Okay, so I'm hoping to, so I got direction on that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We'll have some information for you in January and
Okay.
hopefully get that out to you ahead of time so you can digest a little bit and have some questions. Make sure I'm not. Yep, okay. So I wanted to set the stage a little bit for our very first policy topic, which is kind of looking at that rate of return. I hope this is an easy win, if you will, but if it's not something that we want to, again, get that general consensus on today, that's fine. But I wanted to kind of start that conversation. I think that'll then set the stage for a lot of the rest of it. But in kind of setting that up, and this I think is a really good place to start just for all of this conversation, which is what does our own code say about the purpose of solid waste management? And so it's in your handout there on the screen. As I read this, one of the primary things is to protect health, safety, and welfare. To regulate collection, disposal, and recycling, and resource recovery of solid waste, and to establish a process for the grant of solid waste management franchises. So, but that primary thing is getting the trash off the curb. That's the number one priority of solid waste management within the city of Salem. We're not doing that. None of the rest of it matters. If you have a difference of opinion, please let me know. But that's as I read our code, that's our primary responsibility is to not have trash on the curb, to dispose of that trash, right? So that there's some elements to that. There's some nuances. So moving into A, provide for safe and sanitary collection, disposal, transportation, disposal, and solid waste. Provide for recycling and resource recovery. So we're definitely considering, it's like, hey, yes, we don't want to just throw all of it away. We want to try to recover and recycle what we can out of that, but doing it safely and sanitary. We're coordinating with federal, state, and local agencies in the cooperation and the provision of that solid waste management. We also were on C there. What are some of those leading edge things? What are the new technologies? What are some of the things that we can improve in our system? So research, studies, surveys, demonstration projects, pilot projects, that type of thing. Under D, this is something that I hit on a lot. So that's, during our rate setting process, we rely on this a lot, is ensuring that rates for solid waste management are just, fair, reasonable, and adequate to provide the necessary solid waste management, recycling, and resource recovery, and prohibit rate preference and discriminatory practices. So I'm going to, this next slide, I'm going to hit on that. Let's see, I'm sorry, it's on the, well, part of this is are adequate to provide the service. And then there's some other things there about technology and economically feasible recycling. So going to move to the next.
Can I just ask really quick, are we talking
Yes.
about on this code an amendment to the code or anything, or I guess one thing that I see is, under the insure rates, we talk about just inadequate, but what about the rest of these? And so I was thinking of, for instance, in that first line, or that the third line and under the purpose, and to establish an equitable process. I mean, if we could, that's just a suggestion for the future, something where we can address get equitable into our code for the whole thing, not just the rates, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so, yes, as we're going through this process, one, if there's something that this body would like to make a recommendation as make a code amendment to add to it, yes, absolutely, that is appropriate. The other thing is,
Okay, thank you.
there are priorities of this committee that are in conflict with the code and want to do something different, then that would be a recommendation you could make that would then lead to a code amendment, something to change there, not just an addition.
A couple of things that I'm not seeing here would be sustainable. I don't really like, I know that it's in there, it's baked in, right? But
Mhm.
I mean, and I'm just now like reading this, so please bear with me.
So
And
Sure,
I
yeah.
don't see any kind of environmental protections on here, which I don't know if that's overall welfare. Is that what welfare means? What does welfare mean, actually? Does that make sense?
Yep.
So maybe some clarity on that would be, and this is something that I will take home and think about.
Yep.
But those are my first, just so everybody is understanding where my brain is going, and I'd love to hear thoughts on yours as well.
my question to you, when you talk about sustainability,
Mm-hmm.
what are you,
So I'm thinking about like the way that we're treating Coffin Butte is not sustainable. Right? So in my mind, that is something, that is a resource that we have that is quickly
so
outpacing.
we're talking about sustainability for the resources being used, not sustainability for cost to them, individual.
I mean, I think cost matters too, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking about the whole system, the life of the product, like how are we? Because right now I feel like we're out of whack. Does that make sense? We are producing more than we are able to,
That our system can manage.
than our system can
Yeah,
manage.
so that goes
And-
back to what Dakota was saying, in the sense that we have to get how we buy things.
Yeah, I mean,
what
all of
we
it.
buy, and then the producers that manufacture the boxes and everything that it's put in.
Right.
So this is what I ran into in the medical waste recycling program I had. What we aimed to do was get the medical manufacturers to reduce the types of packaging. And oh my goodness.
Right.
That is so hard. So how
Right.
can this committee make those
Right.
changes? That's like, oh my God.
Yes.
How do you do that?
Now, I want to be sensitive to Mickey's time because I know she has like 2
Yes,
minutes.
Sorry.
Do you have a last like part? I felt like you had another section of this.
Yeah, so the next one is diving a little deeper into the rates piece. So these are the, when adjusting or establishing or adjusting rates, this is what our code says we shall consider.
Okay.
And so we're looking at current and projected returns. None of this should be a surprise. Operating expenses, the replacement of equipment. So there's the
Electric vehicles.
the heavy industry or the capital heavy industry part of that.
Mhm.
Consultation, and here on 5, this is kind of where I want to focus in on, is that reasonable operating margin?
Yeah.
So we've
Yes.
talked about that. And then there's other aspects here, again, composting, recycling, reuse, and any other factor deemed relevant by the council, by the way.
Ooh, other duties as assigned. I love it.
Yes. I want to also point out the very last one here. So this is where there's some flexibility that we have. So where no rate has been established for a particular kind of service, the director, AKA the city manager,
Okay.
may establish an interim rate pursuant to the factors listed in F, which is up above in the section, until a final rate has been set by the council.
Okay.
So we can make some midterm changes, if you will. This is specific to a service that isn't there before, but we can, there may be some flexibility there. So anyway, just
Okay.
keeping that in the back of your mind.
Okay.
So diving a little deeper in that, reasonable operating margin. Talked about a pre-tax return on revenue, AKA margin, however you want to call that. So this is calculated, and this is fairly simple, but you're looking at a financial statement, you have total revenue,
Mhm.
all the revenue that comes in, minus all of the allowable expenses. So 2 examples of non-allowable expenses are donations and executive life insurance. So those are, legitimate business expenses from a business perspective, and may even be tax deductible and all that kind of stuff. But from a rate setting perspective, are non-allowable expenses. And there's some other things that we look at, but just 2 examples. That gives you what's called so revenue minus allowable expenses gives you what's called franchise income. That divided by the total revenue and gives us that return on revenue. Again, that 10% target that we look at. Why 10%? What do they do with that 10%? Approximately 3% of that in local, state, and federal taxes. This can also vary depending on the type of corporation, business type that they have. So there's some variations here, but this is general. 3% is allocated to reserves for, again, that capital heavy industry, operating needs, that type of thing, reserve for that. And then the balance is then back to the owners for their forms of dividends and distributions, which in some cases is also taxed further. So, 3%, if we're using a 10%, that's 6, we believe it's about 4% back to the haulers in terms of that equity owner profit. So that's kind of the breakdown and why we have that 10%. Now, for some comparability, when we look at the 10 largest cities in Oregon, I think we're kind of right, or we're par for the course for most of those. I've mentioned Gresham and Beaverton on here. Those are both actually in their code. That is codified, but that's what they're, that 10 and 9% for those two. The rest of them, I believe, is kind of like what we have. It's what we've always done. I'm not sure if it's in policy or what, but so I think we're in line. And so part of what I'm, again, looking for some general consensus, we can bring back and start to write it into a policy and have further discussion. But if this is, are there concerns? Are there, what areas of this might you want additional information? Where would you like to go from here on just this one item?
Mickey, I know your time is short. Do you have some comments on this first off?
Oh, I'm thinking of the 3%, and other percent. I'm still really thinking about it. What's fair and what's just looking at other places. I guess I don't really have any comments. I'm still processing here.
Okay.
Good.
Please let me know if you need to step away or just wave at us or something.
Yeah, since it's 1:15, I probably better head downstairs. So thank you very much for making time for me.
Okay, thanks, Mickey. Enjoy
Yep, see y'all
Canada.
later.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
How about you two?
I'm fine with 10%.
So I too am fine with 10%. I'm wondering if we're going to put it in as a policy, I'm wondering if it should have a percentage rating, like some of these have 8 to 10%. I don't know if maybe we should do something like 9 to 11 or, something that gives a little bit of variance in the unknowns that maybe.
That's a great segue, if you will. So we generally, so we target the 10%. I apologize, I didn't put it up here, but we then from the sidebars, if you will, hope that at least it's somewhere between 8 and 12.
Yes.
So there's about a 2%. I think we've talked about that a little bit before. So if it's at least 8 and less than 12, those are kind of like the risk test, if you will, on either side, targeting that 10%. And so there's 2 ways we can apply that to our rate setting process. One is to say, yes, we're coming in at 9.5, but we're going to adjust it up to 10, and we're continually aiming and adjusting for 10% each time. The other is to say, okay, well, it came in at 8.2. We're going to leave it until we know that it's less than 8. Or if it's above 12, hey, we actually need to make some adjustments. If it's, or we need to adjust something down or make some other change that way. So how we apply that 8 to 12 or 10 target, there could be there's some nuance there. We can have some discussion on that if there's a preference. So, and right now I think the model, that exercise of going through that would be really great, particularly when we look at the 3 different lines of business. For example, that's for Marion County for this 2024, we only increased the CART by the 5.35%, right? The other two, we had a 0%. That is because those other two for 2024 were projected to be above 10%. And so we, as part of the exercise, we increased the CART rate until the consolidated rate reached 10%. So the consolidated of all three of those rates together, once that hit 10%. So technically the CART rate is still going to be a little bit under 10%, because we're trying to hit the consolidated at 10, if that makes sense. And so there's some nuances in there that I'd love to go through a kind of exercise of here's the model and here's how we, you move this goes down. If you move this, how kind of all that works in that place. So again, no decisions today. There's no action items,
Yeah.
right? But just some food for thought, and if there's major concerns, I'd really like to dive deeper. But to your comment earlier, Councilor Nishioka, that I'd like to better understand it, and I'd love to have you understand a little bit more.
I'm really interested, I mean, I'm fine with the 10%, but I'm really interested in how we write it into the code to
Yeah.
include the parameters. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
Those
Yep.
bookends.
Yeah, the bookends. I'm interested to see how that, because I don't want it to be written into code that it shall be 10%. And
Right.
there's no, there's no nuance.
I think the other thing is, I don't understand what opportunities we have to scold or have them better behave, in the sense of maybe they're not educating enough, and what is enough, I don't know. If they're not doing some of the things that we've asked them to do. And how would we say, okay, we have this margin, but I felt like you didn't do everything.
So we want accountability.
Yeah, some sort of accountability and a way to monetize that.
So penalties / accountability
Yeah.
type of.
I'm just wondering how that would fit in all of
Mhm.
this, in the sense, and then what criteria are we judging them on?
Yep.
That's, they have to fully understand, well, we expect this much education and what it looks like for recycling, or this much in,
Is that more part of the franchise agreement, right? As opposed to the
Maybe.
policy?
Yep, and so
things for clarifying.
thank you for that. So Monday night, the question was asked, what can we do to, the word wasn't encourage, but to make the haulers do more outreach. It wasn't, so it's not written in our code, but our franchise agreement does lay out that they shall do, I forgot the wording, I can bring that back when we have this conversation, but there's additional responsibilities laid out in our franchise agreement that says they're going to be doing outreach, more so than what's in the code. And so, and I believe in the franchise agreement, and there are some, hey, if you don't do this, then, so the ultimate stick is their franchise agreement.
Yes.
Yeah.
When is that due?
Great question. So all 6 haulers
Mhm.
have the exact same franchise language, except for their name, and the exhibit that shows their service territory. But they're all identical. The term of those agreements is a 7-year franchise agreement. Every year, 1 additional year is added to it. So it's called a 7-year rolling franchise.
Okay,
So
so we have the chance every year to review it.
So it's an automatic roll,
Okay.
but the stick is if they're not meeting
Sure.
reporting or service or whatever, we can stop that roll
Okay.
that says you now have 7 years.
Right.
And then the next year you have 6 years, and then you have 5 years, and then you have 4 years.
Okay.
There are other things where we can just pull it, if it's just egregious. But that's that gives us, that flex, or that stick, if you will, but also then gives the haulers, though, that 7-year rolling, Because there's, again, it's capital heavy industry. They are making investments years out in the future to be able to continue providing that service. And that gives them the assurance that they have a contract for the next 7 years. Continually.
I know you guys are deep divers. Are you guys wanting to see the franchise agreement?
Yes.
I thought you would.
So the link that I've provided, I can send it out again in an email. That is the find your hauler or find your utility provider. You scroll down to the solid waste. There's a link that says franchise agreements. I put the I think it's DNO. Is I didn't do
You
all
just-
7 of them or all 6 of them.
I
When
can
did you
find that.
send that to us?
So it's on the link, but I will send it to you if you would like.
Oh, okay, it's on the link, all right.
Yep, it's on that, yeah, if you don't find it, let me know and I'll send it out. What needs to be added, there are 3 amendments to it. One of them is the adjustment from the franchise from 5% to 7%, and there's some other things that are relatively minor in terms of amendments to that.
Okay.
And I'll need to get those added on there, but the bulk of that is on that one link. And again, it's all the same language for all of them.
So I also know that Mickey is a deep diver. Could you send it to her? Because
Yep.
she's not part of this conversation, and
Yep.
you might as well just CC everybody, but the committee.
Yep.
But yes, I know she is gonna wanna. Elephant.
I was gonna sneeze.
I know.
I was trying to stop.
Okay,
Okay.
sorry, look
So-
at us.
So I'm
talking
hearing
time.
that generally,
Yeah.
there's no major concerns with that 10%, but maybe we'd like to understand a little bit more and how it's applied
Mhm.
to the rate setting process.
Thanks for
Jim.
joining us, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yes,
I'm here. Okay, sounds good. The next thing, and again, this is on that financially sustainable side of things, is,
Where are we at on time? Is it still another?
oh,
I would
I'm
say
sorry.
we can I am actually really fascinated by this conversation. The geek in me does not care. So I'm always here to do another presentation.
Yep, I apologize. Yeah, we have 6
No.
minutes. That's not gonna give
You're
you
fine.
the time.
These are really good conversations that please have.
Okay.
Sorry, we're
Okay,
taking
I
so
know.
much
You're
time.
fine.
so we'll make sure that he gets to go first.
Next time.
Next time.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh my God, no. You're totally fine. We have the full class in spring. You don't want to take that one. It's a long
Yeah.
commitment. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
We really appreciate you being here.
I love learning.
Okay, carry on
So
down the finance.
The last thing kind of as part of this financially sustainable conversation that I want to talk about today and just kind of start to set the stage. And I bring this up because I think it's going to help inform our conversation on nearly every other thing on this list, is this idea of cost-based rates that also I think blends into incentivizing, subsidization, kind of that whole, how do we, what's our policy and setting that base understanding of how rates are going to be set versus the cost of providing the service.
Yes.
That makes sense, right? So some considerations as we're having that conversation. So right now we try to, best we can, have and again, this is taking from that and prohibit in the last line of the top part here, prohibit rate preferences and other discriminatory practices.
This is where we're getting at having bigger cans subsidize little cans.
Yes, yes.
And to date, we have not done that because we have this sentence in here of not doing this kind of preference work.
Yep, there is some of that in there. I won't say it's perfect, but our general goal has been to, yes, avoid the rate preference. So just as an example, the 20 gallon every other
Right.
week is subsidized by the others.
Already,
It is, yes.
but we don't say that it is outright.
At the meeting that we set that formally, I think a year or two ago, it was made known,
Okay.
but but yes,
Okay.
so that can be part of our conversation, right?
This is going to be a big part of this committee's work right here.
Which is why I wanted to bring it up now, bring it up early to get us thinking. So considerations around that, lines of business, cart, container, drop box. First of all, I want to make sure, does anyone have any questions about the differences between those three? And how it might overlap between commercial, residential, and that type of thing?
How it overlaps.
Right.
So I don't know that it overlaps. I thought they were completely separate.
So cart, all residents are cart,
Yes.
but some businesses are also cart.
So a small business or something.
Right.
Yes.
So many of them, most of them are 95 gallon. They might have a 65 gallon for a business, but most of them are 65 or 95 gallon for the trash size, right? Most of the business rates don't include the mixed organics, but there's usually a garbage can and a recycle can. So that's what's in the rate there. So when we say carts, that's why I say mostly residential, is because some of them are business. The containers are, again, the dumpsters, the dumpster looking like things that are picked up on a regular basis. And then the drop box are for temporary project construction, that type of thing.
So let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
So they have recyclable at an office. You can have recyclable.
Mhm.
But you said they didn't have the mixed organics because then they don't have a way to put out food. Is that what I'm hearing? There's a lot of offices, they eat a lot, they eat a couple meals a day at their office. And it would be nice if that would be something that they'd have available. Might not be the big green thing.
So there is a food waste for restaurants and that type of thing. But
not
generally,
Small
the
businesses.
cart rate for businesses or for commercial does not include
Doesn't
the
include
the
that.
mixed organics. It can be added. So as kind of an a la carte, you can add that
Okay,
service,
so they can
but
add it.
it's not included in the base rate.
Okay, not included in the base rate, but they could add it, and we could encourage them to add
Yes.
You could call them.
Walk around and pick up the
Each individual
Yeah,
put
yeah.
a flyer and tag the can. Sorry,
So
I joke.
I know we're
Yes,
just about out of
Yeah,
time here.
I'm sorry.
But, oh, no, I love this conversation. We can stop this anytime we need to. We can continue this next time. But again, kind of those
Yeah.
things we want to keep in mind is why I would, as staff would encourage, the prohibiting rate preferences. So again, levels of service, this is where you're referring to a larger cart subsidizing a smaller cart to encourage less. That's a concept we want to explore.
Right.
The last one is our haulers customer mix. And this is
Mm,
really in terms of that commercial versus residential, or in that some of our haulers have a lot more residential customers.
Yeah.
Or some of them have more commercial customers. And so as we start to, if we were wanting to do something, as an example, Eugene
Mhm.
has different rates. Looking at the rates, it's fairly clear to me that commercial subsidizes residential. We have higher, Salem has higher cart rates than Eugene and Springfield and many others do. But Salem has the lowest container rates out of all of our comparable. all the
That's
comparable cities,
fascinating.
Both Marion and Polk.
Wow. Here's my first thought on this.
Mhm.
I am not the best person to be making these choices because I am guessing what I would love to see is a white paper from the haulers on this. Tell me the pros and cons. Tell me what you think. Tell me about the issues that you see coming
Mhm.
forward with this. Like, this is where, this is my own personal opinion, this is where me as a policymaker can totally screw things up. I can go in with really great intentions,
Mhm.
but the realities on the ground are so different from
What you assume.
what is being talked about at council chambers. So I am not a politician who wants anything to do with that. I really don't want to cause havoc
I'm sorry.
for an ideal.
Sure.
So I need to know from them, because it sounds to me like they've thought about this. They understand the complexities of why they have it set up the way that they do, so that it's fair between all of them around the different mix of what they service. I want to know from them, why are our containers why are they the lowest in the area? That's fascinating to me, as far as not residential, but commercial. I don't know about you guys. How do you feel about this conversation?
Oh, I think that we do need to hear from the haulers and understand their difficulties and reasoning for rates. And so that we have that to work with.
Mhm.
Because if we don't understand their problems, to try to set a policy is,
We don't want those unintended consequences.
Oh
We
my
do
God.
not.
I just
Yeah.
see really bad things.
Mhm.
I understand why people want to subsidize, like 350. I understand exactly why they want to do this.
Mhm.
And I think it's honorable, and I think
Right.
that their heart is in the right place, and
Yes.
all of those things are true. I
But-
also think this is very sensitive stuff that we're messing with. I feel like we're going behind the scenes and messing with stuff that we don't fully understand. And so I will just want to understand it better from the hauler's perspective.
That's one reason I think I mentioned earlier that I want this body to have a clear understanding of the direction it wants to go,
Mhm.
because I believe everything else
Yeah.
is this is kind of a core belief,
is.
if you will, a core
Yeah.
policy that many other things on this list are going to hinge off of.
yes,
Yep.
yes,
I agree.
exactly.
So
you
it sounds
led
like
us
that's
into
probably
the-
one of the first things we need to
I think so.
address.
Really, because it has to provide us the guidance. If we don't understand their needs, how are we going to make adjustments to it?
Well, and if we're not going to be able to, so say we decide to stay with the way it is,
Mhm.
we need to know that this isn't a lever that is available for us to pull in order to reach our other goals.
Right,
That-
incentivizing,
Yes,
et cetera.
incentivizing and all that stuff, right? How are we going to reach our other goals if this isn't, if we take this lever out of the mix?
Right.
Any other thoughts on that? I want to be respectful of time. Solid waste policy considerations. Apartments aren't on here, and that's something we've talked about a couple times. I'm sorry.
Multifamily.
Is
yeah.
multifamily on here that I'm missing?
Uh,
I'm sorry.
I
We
did
were
not- I did
talking
not-
and I had the
Yeah,
thought and
no.
I was like, crap.
That's exactly why we're having this
Okay.
conversation, because I
Thank you.
forgot to put it on here.
Okay, great.
But it was in your head.
Yes.
Yes, somewhere. It's also part of RMA, so that was one of
Okay.
those things that is to be implemented July 1st of 2026,
Sorry.
Okay.
is multifamily. But anyway, yeah, we could have a whole long
Recycling,
conversation on that.
monetization.
Sorry, I apologize.
No,
Yes,
you're fine.
lots of acronyms.
Okay.
So I'll put, I'm not sure where it's gonna go, but I'll,
Figure it out.
Yep.
And specifically recycling and yard debris or food pickup.
Would
Right.
probably go under equitable rates.
yeah, so
I
just
mean,
to have the conversation, so you are
Yeah.
aware. That service is available
right now,
to anyone,
But
right?
the
But
owners
the
of
landlord, the owner
Right.
is the one who,
saying no.
and sometimes that's because they've had it. And the haulers are saying, there's too much contamination in here.
Right.
We're just throwing it away anyway. And so the landlord
Okay.
says, fine, just put another dumpster there instead of a recycle bin.
Right.
And so we
Okay.
manage it that way. And so again, that's going to be a huge lift, I believe, on the education and outreach and just understanding, unless we
Maybe
take
we just need
another
to,
model.
maybe
on
we
that.
just need to put it under outreach and education. Because maybe that outreach looks different. I don't know. Maybe we have pixie
It's-
dust
yeah.
and unicorns we can send out into the world.
I mean, even I've gone through master recycling programs, but because it is ever changing with what those materials are, I'm still at a loss. Like, what can I put in there? I'm still a hopeful recycler.
Uh-oh.
I'm serious. I can be. I'll go, yeah, it's a 10 ounce. It's okay. Or whatever ounce. you're picking up.
Confessions of a counselor.
I think, is it 12 ounces or is it 8?
12, yeah.
So it's like 10 ounce.
Well, no, and your point is confusing because in the metro area, they've expanded plastic to drink 6 ounces. That could be your hummus,
Yes.
your yogurt, whatever. Yes, there's.
See, like this I can't do. I know that. And yet I still buy them.
The glass ones are really good. The glass, the other
Yeah, but glasses
Sorry.
are really tough recycling material.
Well, I think you'd reuse, but yeah, you wouldn't be able
Yeah.
to, well, so food-grade glass. I don't want to take but that you can put in your recycling.
So anyway, I can understand an apartment's
Yeah.
owner's problem.
Completely.
And,
Yeah.
and people will put the strangest things. They'll just put it in any bin. They just are glad to have
I
it
think
going
somebody
in
else
the bin.
wants to use this bowling ball. I'm gonna put it in recycling. Yeah.
The garbage is full, so you put it in recycle.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Right,
It's full
totally.
of-
They'll sort it out.
They will sort it out.
That's what they
The
say.
landlord's responsibility.
Somebody's job is to do that.
Okay, so at our next meeting, you will come back?
Yeah, no, and I can
Okay.
talk about multifamily too if you wanted more deep dive, some
Ooh.
issues with that one,
Yeah.
equity issues, property manager, all that cool stuff. Just
Okay,
things they could be facing
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
cause to X or Y too. And that's
Awesome.
another holler conversation too that
Yeah.
I would round.
yeah, I would appreciate that. Because we get that question a lot, and like, how do we, learning for me helps me communicate with constituents better.
Helps.
Helps. Okay, is there anything else for today?
Nope.
Can you also send out the last few slides to the committee? Oh, I guess we have it.
I sent
Sent it to
I
Mickey?
sent the entire agenda to Mickey.
Because
Yep.
I will dive into this code.
And of course, the code pieces, I just pulled out two small pieces. There's
There's more.
much more
Okay,
that talks about franchising and there's a lot of different issues that we have years of material
well, let's do it.
we could
Okay.
go through, but yeah, we're looking at some
We'll start
important things now. Yep,
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
you adjourn.
We are adjourned,
Thank you.
and we have Dolly.
Thank you.